Last year, after I posted my day trading video, I was contacted by Trirex. This is a company that sold Forex trading bots. And I really didn't want anything to do with it because personally, I don't believe that a profitable trading bot that's just readily available to the public actually exists. Let me remind you that 80 to 90% of professional fund managers underperform the market. So even people that go to school and do this as a 9-to-5 job aren't able to achieve this. And if such a trading bot ever existed, it would be much more likely for a big banking firm like Citadel or something to acquire the right to buy the bot for billions of dollars to make it into a proprietary, highly exclusive trading system rather than something that anyone can just buy online. Furthermore, during the period where I was making trading content, the idea of trading bots did interest me. So I looked a bunch of them up, and for the ones that supposedly worked, I looked up their reviews on Reddit, and there wasn't a single one that even had half decent reviews. At least the ones that I came across, basically they were all scams. As you can imagine, my expectations for Trirex was nearly non-existent, but it basically went to zero the moment I looked at their documentation. There was one word in there that told me that this is absolutely not going to work, and that word is Martingale. The Martingale strategy is historically a gambling strategy. This is used when your odds are winning are about 50%. So for instance, a coin flip. You have a 50% chance of heads or tails, or if you buy a random stock, then there's a 50% chance it goes up and a 50% chance it goes down. So this is how it works. So let's say every time we flip heads, we win $100, but every time we flip tails, we lose $100. So the key component of the Martingale strategy is that every time you lose, you have to double your next bet. So let's say I bet $100, we flip heads, and then we get $100 back. But let's say I bet $100 again, and then we flip tails, then I lose this, but next time I would have to bet $200. So let's say I flip tails again, I lose this amount of money. This time I have to bet $400. Let's say we flip tails again, we lose again. This time we have to bet $800. In my bankroll, we only have $100 left. So far we lost $700, but now we're risking $800. So let's say in this scenario, we flip heads now. Not only do we get all of this money back, but we also make an extra $100 on top. So the appeal of the Martingale strategy is that if you're losing a bunch of times, you're only one win away from making all of that money back and more. And the chances are pretty good. But this is where the gambler's mentality can get really dangerous. Because as you're doubling your bet size every single time, you're risking more and more. And you start to think to yourself, well, I lost 3 times in a row. Surely I won't lose 4 times in a row, right? It's only about time before I start winning again. This mentality is a complete trap because each coin flip is independent of each other. It's still going to be 50-50. And as you can see from the example that I showed you earlier, if I had lost that $800 bet, this $1,600 would have went away and turned into only $100 within just 4 bets. To visualize how it would look on a stock or a Forex chart, it would look something like this. Mathematically, the Martingale strategy can only work under one condition, and that one condition is if you have an infinite amount of money. And if you fall under that category, then I doubt you'd be watching this video right now. This is a high-risk strategy that is very dangerous. If you look at the backtest on their website, you can even see these huge drawdowns taking place. This is the result of multiple losses in a row, which doubles every loss. That being said, it's easy to see how people can make money with this, even for potentially extended periods of time, as was shown in their backtests. But with this strategy, all it takes is a single losing streak for you to blow up your entire account, and all of those gains that you've accumulated over the months or years would have been all for nothing. So if you ever come across a Forex bot or a strategy that mentions Martingale, you want to stay away from it as far as possible. It's not a sustainable strategy, and eventually this entire account will go to zero. But there was something that I decided to do that would make this very interesting. I told the Trirex team that the only condition in which I would create this video for them is if the owner of the bot used his own money during this showcase. Since I'm completely unconvinced that this is going to work work, I'm forcing them to put their money where their mouth is. So I will use the bot, but they will fund the account. And I'm gonna be using a regulated brokerage, so they can't do any of this weird stuff where they would maybe manipulate the account balance or anything like that. The brokerage that I'm going with is Forex.com. So I'm in complete control of it. If the account ends negative by the end of the demonstration, then I'm gonna give them back what's left of the account. So if the account goes to zero, not only would it look bad on them, but they would have completely lost all that money. And personally, I suspect this to be a likely outcome. But if the bot makes profit, I get to keep the profit and I give them the original amount back. To my surprise, they agreed. And another layer to this is that I made it completely up to them how much they want to fund the account by. In some ways, this is going to test their confidence in their product, because if they had a high degree of confidence, then obviously they would try to fund my account as much as possible. But if they just give me a small amount of money, then it's easier to come to the conclusion that they're not really that confident in their own product. And the number that they ended up going with is $1,000. I think it's the absolute bare minimum for a trading account, but to be fair, it is a little bit sus to wire someone a huge amount of money, especially to someone who's never traded Forex before like me. Furthermore, they offered me an affiliate program where I would get a cut of the sales after publishing the video, but I decided not to take it. So this is gonna be my true, honest review of my experience doing this. I didn't really make this project a priority, so unfortunately, it wasn't until a whole year later that I was able to set this up. And by then, a lot has changed. The Trirex team released a new bot called Trirex Surge. And that was the one that they wanted to showcase, not the other one that involved the Martingale strategy. So Trirex Surge, the one that I'm actually going to use, involves some sort of breakout trading strategy. Now, this is an actual legitimate trading strategy. Generally, breakout strategies involve executing a trade after the break of a support or a resistance. Now, whether or not this trading strategy could be automated is a completely different question. You can also set a percentage amount that you're willing to risk per trade. So typically for most things that involve probabilities like day trading or sports betting, the 1% rule is what I go by, meaning that you shouldn't risk more than 1% of your account for any given trade or bet. As for the setup process for the bot, from the perspective of someone who's never touched Forex before, this isn't really something that you could just learn on the fly, because this bot is going to utilize the MetaTrader 5 trading platform, which is the ugliest user interface that I've seen in my life, quite frankly. So I had to follow the Trirex guide step by step as carefully as possible. And just to make sure, I hopped on the call with Quentin, which is the owner of Trirex, just so that he can double check that I did everything correctly. So if he reviews everything and I run the bot, and in the event where I lose a bunch of money, there's basically no excuse since he confirmed that I did it right. So now that it's set up, all I gotta do is just wait and see what it does. First two trades the bot took were losing trades. Then shortly after, Quentin mentioned that I should add a setup to the bot. High key, I didn't want to touch anything because it took me a while to set up. I didn't want to mess it up, but I ended up updating it and I did mess something up. And I realized it only after going an entire week without trade. So I asked Quentin what's going on and he said, oh, it was because the bot was turned off. And now I have beef with this button right here. This is the on and off button for automated trading, and this icon is the stop icon. What do you think happens when you click on it? I don't know about you, but to me, if I click on this button, it means it's going to stop automated trading. Just to make sure, I did click on it and then it turns into a play button. So if I click the play button, you would think that it starts automated trading. But it turns out that the way that it actually works is completely backwards. If it says stop, it's stopped. If it says play, it means it's playing. I can't tell if I'm just stupid, but that happened. Not the best start, but admittedly, it's my fault and I'm just gonna blame the UI of MetaTrader 5. Now, on the 30th, the bot almost made back all of its losses. This screw up actually makes it harder to evaluate how this bot would accurately perform over a set period of time. So I decided that we'll just start the beginning at the beginning of May, instead of the middle of April, which was the original plan. I made $50, which is a 5% return, which honestly is phenomenal. It doesn't sound like a lot, but the benchmark that I'm using is the average yearly return on the S&P 500, which is around 10% a year. And this bot achieved half of that in a single month. And later on, I'm gonna compare the results of this bot against the S&P 500 during the same time frame. In the next week of next month, I made another $21. But starting on the 7th, I increased my risk for both USD JPY setup from 0.5% to 1%. Next week after that, I actually got locked out of my server. This wasn't the fault of the bot, but I actually think that this technical issue, which was outside of my control, makes for a more realistic scenario, since these things do happen in a realistic setting. Exhibit A happened to me. However, by the end of June, unfortunately, I've only made $11 for the whole month, but at least we ended the month positive. However, my return on investment over the course of 2 months is now at 6%, which doesn't look as good. Now, the next month after that was awesome. On July, I stopped running it on the 11th, but I ended up with $109 in profit during this 2-week period that I was running in July. So in total, my account balance now is sitting at $1,171.33. I ran this bot for about 70 days, and over that time period, I made a 17.13% return on investment. These are my real results, and honestly, this went way better than I expected. And even though I did try this out for a period of 70 days, I honestly still don't think this is a long enough time period to tell whether or not this is going to be something sustainable or whether or not this is going to outperform the S&P 500 over a long period of time. How does this compare to the S&P 500 during this same exact time period? In my opinion, this is the most important thing to look at because you can be a profitable trader or have a profitable trading bot, but if you're underperforming the S&P 500, then you are objectively doing more work for less money. So during this time period, the S&P 500 had a gain of 11.7%. So the bot clearly outperformed here by a wide margin, I'd say. But if you want some more insights, we can look at some of the stats here on TradeZella. Here we have our win rate sitting at a nice 56%. Profit factor, total profits divided by total losses. So a profit factor above 1 indicates a profitable trading system. So this is above 1. So far, so good. Average win-loss trade. So this means every time I win, on average, I make $8.19 for every winning trade, and on average, I lose $4.93 for every losing trade. So this is how much profit we made during this time period. As you can see, we have a dip over here. This would be this section over here where we have multiple losing days in a row. However, drawdowns like these are pretty normal for profitable trading systems. In the Martingale system, however, it would have been totally possible that my account would have been finished during this period. So this website is a pretty good way to track your trades. Having these stats and a general overview of how your trades are going is pretty helpful. Another thing that you can do to gauge the viability of this bot is through backtesting. So throughout this experiment, I've been running 3 setups at the same time, GBP USD and 2 different USD JPY setups. So for a big backtest between 2013 and 2024, the S&P 500 approximately made 323% ROI. For the setups, we have a detailed view here. I'm not going to go over this. In the description, I'm going to have a Google Doc of all of the detailed results. For the sake of time in this video, I'm just going to go over the simplified results. So for all of these results, it's starting off with $10,000 for the initial deposit while risking 1% for each trade. As you can see, GBP USD had a slight underperformance. USD JPY2 doesn't even look real. Over 14,000% return on investment. So theoretically, if you started off with 10K and you ran this over the last 12 years, you would have been a millionaire. I believe it was this year that this bot actually came out, so that wouldn't have been possible. But nevertheless, the backtesting results look unbelievable. USD JPY3 over 2,000%. That is also an overwhelming overperformance. As impressive as these numbers are, I've seen other Forex bot backtesting results, and basically all of them are like, oh, 1,000%, 2,000, 3,000%, like almost as if they never lose. So in my opinion, the more interesting backtest results will come from specific market conditions. So that's exactly what I did here. So in 2018, the S&P 500 was a little bit stagnant. As you can see, it was quite volatile. However, it ended with negative 7.8% 32.57%. The trading bot strategies did fairly well. The overwhelming overperformance for both the USD JPY setups and also an overperformance with the GBP USD setup as well. Moving on to 2020, during this year there was a period where the markets absolutely just crashed. Everyone thought it was going to be the end of the world. S&P 500 fell by 32% over the course of 1 month during February and March. The bot setups, on the other hand, in comparison to the S&P 500, did fairly well. As you can see, GBP USD negative 1.96%, which is still an overwhelming overperformance over negative 32.58%. Again, what we're looking for is results of the bot setup versus the S&P 500. So as long as it does better than the S&P 500, it is going to be an overperformance. Also, the USD JPY setups also did phenomenal. So far, so good. Now in 2022, we had a bear market, meaning the markets were just going down. So during this year, the S&P 500 went down by 20.77%. The bot setups, again, overwhelming overperformance. You know you have a good trading strategy if it doesn't matter if the market is going up or down, it's still making money. Now we go over to 2023 and the S&P 500 did really well. The gain of 22.48%, very, very good. On the other hand, finally we see a situation where the bot had underperformed the S&P 500. Obviously, it's not perfect, but there isn't really such thing as a perfect trading strategy. And then in 2024, the S&P 500 did really well again. The bot, it did okay. It's a little bit mixed this time. Got an underperformance by GBP USD, slight underperformance from USD JPY 3, and a pretty good overperformance by USD JPY 2. Overall, I think this is still really good. You can draw your own conclusions from these numbers, but overall, it's passing every test that I've thrown at it so far. Low risk with the 1% rule, profitable backtesting with outperformance of the market in different market conditions, and profitable forward testing. So what's the catch? At the end of the day, this is a bot that could possibly manage thousands or maybe tens of thousands of dollars for you, and bots sometimes have bugs. After further testing this, there were instances where the bot wasn't automatically closing out my trades. By the time that this video is published, there's a good chance that this bug is going to be patched, but there's no telling whether or not this will for sure never happen again, or maybe there's another bug that perhaps might be even more damaging. And especially for people who haven't done Forex before, it'll be hard to tell whether or not the bot is bugging out or if it's just doing what it's supposed to be doing. And in the event where the bot is completely bug-free, user error can still play a factor. But to be fair, that's true for every single industry. Even surgeons make errors, unfortunately. So Quentin looked into this, and this isn't technically a bug from the bot. This has to do with a law that US brokers are required to abide by. So if you're based in the US, you can only run one USD JPY setup per account to ensure that there aren't going to be any problems. I didn't know that during my demo. So unfortunately, there's a good chance that this whole time the bot wasn't trading in the way it was intended to. That being said, unfortunately now there's an argument to be made that my results aren't as accurate as I wanted them to be. The second catch, which is an even bigger factor to consider, would be the consequences of too many people using this bot. This would most likely result in something called alpha decay, where a once profitable strategy would become unprofitable over time, and one of the contributing reasons for that is too many people using it. The details as to how this could happen is too complicated to explain here, but here's CoffeeZilla's summary of it.
Reason that people who have profitable strategies, they're just running hedge funds, right? Why would you give away your alpha? People don't understand that in finance, different strategies have a size limitation because at a certain level, you're affecting the market with the size of your trade. So as you size up, your alpha starts to diminish because you start to become more of the market. So the idea that if you were super successful, you would sell your trading ideas is insane. And I just explain it here. It's complicated, but TLDR, if you had success in the Forex market, the last thing you would do is give away your edge.
At this point, I'm gonna lay it out there. I am convinced that this bot actually does work, at least based on what I've seen so far, but the number of users could be a factor in its future efficacy. If it was all just retail traders like myself, I don't think it would be that big of a deal. But you also have to consider the risk of someone who gets the bot to try and start a hedge fund, or perhaps someone who's already part of a financial institution. And if any of those players come into the mix where they're trading with possibly tens of millions of dollars, and I think that would be the biggest threat to the strategies. You know what they say, past performance is not indicative of future result. And it's really up to Quentin, the owner of Trirex, as to how he's going to decide to balance his income from selling the bot itself versus his income using the bot. And it is going to be a bit tricky. So let's just ask him directly. Do you have any like long-term plans for that or short-term plans?
I don't really see it as a problem for our bot. Retail traders like you and me, we don't really move the markets. It's more the banks and the large institutions that move the market. So our strategy is more like catching the moves of the large institutions and the banks. Also, many of our users, I think more than 50%, are trading through prop firms. I guess over 50% are not actually in the markets. And even let's say if we all bought like 100 lot sizes all together, we would make a tiny move in the market, like a very small move.
Now, I could totally see a world where someone who works for a big institution just comes in, analyzes how it works, and then they apply that to a much bigger scale.
I can't really control that. I think it's very unlikely for, well, pretty much the strategy to fail because of too many people trading it. We use the term bot, but it's called an EA, expert advisor. I'm not planning to sell the expert advisor to like thousands of people. Right now, I think around 150 people are running it. And I don't see thousands of people getting this EA. And even if that was the case, there would be a point for me to be like, okay, I'm not selling the EA anymore.
Your soft number would be at like 1,000, your soft cap. Like that's when you would be like, okay, maybe I should slow down a bit here.
I think if it gets close to like 500 sales, there will be a point where I'll be like, I might cap it right here. But honestly, now that I'm thinking about it again, I don't really see a way that the strategy wouldn't work because 500 people are trading it, unless what you are saying, if it is like a large institution. I don't really see a large institution buying the EA for me. What you're saying, I totally understand it.
The reason why I accepted to do the video was because you originally were pitching a Martingale bot, right? I didn't think it was gonna work. Like I still don't think Martingale works. So I thought it would be a interesting video to be like, okay, someone's trying to pitch me a Martingale bot, which I really don't think is gonna work. And
everyone tells you online it doesn't work. So
it would be funny if I made a video and then you end up losing money. But then what ended up happening is 1 year later you come out with a new bot and then fuck, dude, it's doing magic. So, What do you think about that?
I can totally understand where you're coming from regarding Martingale and grids, because basically with every trade you open, you risk your entire balance, which doesn't sound too comfortable. Obviously, the thing with Martingale and grid is basically, besides Zone Search, I have two Martingale bots. One is Martingale, the other one is grid. The pro about these strategies or grid strategies is that it works very well in certain market conditions, and you can make insane money in those market conditions. The downside, obviously, is when the market conditions are not good, you will lose your entire balance. So that's why I think Martingale is not for everyone, definitely. And it is very hard to predict when you are going to make that insane amount of money. So I've been running Sora, which is the first Trirex bot, which is Martingale and grid. I've been running that for 3 years, and I think I have blown my accounts, if I remember correctly, twice in total. So blowing means that you lose your entire balance. And obviously I understand it doesn't sound good when you're blowing your entire account, but that's part of it. The thing with Wave, which is it has more rules to it. It is trading pullbacks. You can decide to use Martingale or not. I don't use Martingale on that. I do use a multiplier, but I've been making great money with that as well. And there is one user, obviously I don't know how everyone is doing, but there's one user that made 13K in the past 2 months with it, and he started from 1K, by the way. So that's the whole thing. You can make insane money with it, but you need to have some very good psychology and mindset. I do think Martingale and grid works. I can understand that you feel certain that it doesn't work, because for some people it works, for some people it doesn't work. But I do definitely think that Zone Search is a better EA, just because you're risking only 1% of your account if you want to, and it has way more data. So you can look back until 2013 and see
Yeah.
how the bot actually performed, and that gives you way more confidence.
So you mentioned like,
Yeah.
okay, in certain market conditions, it works really well. But even like determining what the market conditions are in the present time is like almost impossible. Like really the only way you can like determine a market condition is maybe looking back on it. It's not as easy as it sounds. And I'm sure you understand what I'm trying to say here. Is
Definitely, yeah, definitely.
like what's the market condition right now, right? Like obviously Trump has been doing like a bunch of crazy stuff that's been affecting the markets. But overall it's been looking pretty decent, right? But it's hard to say, right?
Yeah, I totally agree, and that's exactly the hard thing about martingale and grid trading. You don't know until it happened. But I totally agree with what you're saying. It is definitely not the easiest way to make money, and I can totally understand what you're saying with it's not reliable or consistent. The thing is, I have users that are using, let's just talk about Wave for now, that are
Yeah,
using
sure.
Wave rather than zone search, because they like to risk a lot of their balance. So let's say they run 1K and try to move that to 10K, take their profits out, start again. They might blow like 4 times, but if the like month that they're trading in is good, they will make great profits. And I would rather not do it this way, because I wouldn't like to like lose 1K 4 times in a row, for example. And I think a lot of people don't like to trade that way because they don't think or they don't feel it's consistent.
So if I'm understanding his position correctly, he says that Martingale strategies are more for traders with a higher risk tolerance and that it only works for certain market conditions. But if I'm going to be honest, in my opinion, that just sounds like gambling. Obviously, Quentin is going to disagree, but I will appreciate the fact that he was honest and he acknowledges that it's easy to blow up your account using a Martingale strategy. So that applies to both Trirex Sora and Trirex Wave. Just wanted to get that out of the way. But what about Trirex Surge, the bot that we've been testing and trying out this whole time? Is this worth it? Now, I can't make that decision for you. This is their pricing right now. It could change in the future. And as you can imagine, it's not a cheap product. The good thing is that it is lifetime access. So this isn't something that you have to keep paying for every single month. To buy it, you just have it forever. You can make your own decision whether or not it's worth it for you. I do have to warn you, unless I haven't made it clear already, I don't want anyone to look at this bot and have an expectation that it's their ticket to financial freedom, so that it's going to make them rich all of a sudden just because it has some really good backtesting and forward testing results. Again, I'm going to repeat, past performance does not equal to future performance. And it's one of the things that I really don't like about looking up videos about trading on YouTube, because the top results are videos that are going to make it sound like you can just quit your day job the next day. Videos like this where the expectations are very mild to moderate doesn't really do that well. Since my experience with it has been positive so far, I actually put in my own money into the bot. If you can see here, this was a period where I was using the bot using Trirex's funds. I withdrew the account. This is what this big dip was. And then I put in $5,000 of my own money into the bot so that I can continue running it. And so far, it still continues to outperform the S&P 500. So this is when I stopped running it during my experiment. And then this is when I started running it with my own funds using $5,000 with a 1% risk setting. So first few days made 153 bucks. The second week lost 217, and then they easily made that back over the next few weeks on the next month. And if I scroll up, here are some of the updated stats, and so far made $879. So generally speaking, this does look pretty good. I'm not treating it like it's something that's going to make me rich. It's just something that I'm going to run on the side just to diversify my investment and my income streams a little bit more. And I think that's a decent mindset to have. If this was informative, all the links are going to be in the description. If you see any errors or criticisms as far as my testing and how I looked at these numbers, please let me know in the comment section, and I'll make any important updates in the pinned comment. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.